So there are some things to consider if you go as an attendee. The advantages, of course, are you're not paying the table fee. You're not stuck to your table. If you want to call it a night early, you can. If you want to call it a night when you're tabling, you cannot. You are there for the hours that they are open. Hello and welcome to Pesto Comics. This is the entry for October 25th, 2025. Comic-Con strategy. Should you table or just attend? Welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Adriano. I'm a comic book writer and letterer, but I also publish everything through Pesto Comics, and I crowdfund it all on Kickstarter. But the most important thing I do is sell things direct at conventions. And one of the biggest things I've had to learn is which conventions are worth going to and which aren't. It's not as clear-cut as you may think, and sometimes it's really a question of, should I have still gone to the convention, but maybe just gone as an attendee? So that's what we're going to figure out today. We're going to look at what is the best way to approach conventions in general. Should you just be an attendee and network for free? Or should you have a presence and come off as a true professional by having a table and trying to make sales with everyone else there? But before we get too deep into it, I want to let you know that today actually is a paid post. So what's going to happen is we're going to go through the whole conversation up front. I'm going to make that all free for everyone on Substack and YouTube to enjoy both as a video or audio, or if you want to read the newsletter on Substack. That'll all be free. What's going to happen behind the paywall is we're going to go through each convention I've been to. I'm going to share how much I paid for table and how much I made back. I don't have the exact figures, unfortunately, because I'm kind of bad at keeping track of exactly how many sales I've made. I do more of the convenience store thing where I know how much I brought and then I know how much I don't have anymore. But it's not the most accurate way of tracking exactly what you've made at each convention. But I do know how I fared at each one, and I'm going to share all of that with you on the other side of the paywall. But for now, let's speak broadly, looking at whether it's better to be an attendee, like I was just last weekend at New York Comic Con, or to table, like I did just a few weeks ago at Word on the Street. So given that both New York Comic Con and Word on the Street are so fresh in my mind, I feel like now is a good opportunity to reflect on what is the best strategy. It's something I've really been juggling with and trying to figure out, is it worth paying a table fee just to say that you're there, just to be in the program, just to know that people can find you there, that you will certainly, definitely be there to be found? Or should you just mill about and let people know that you're there and you're free to meet everybody else who has a table and say hello to everybody and, kind of make yourself more available instead of being anchored to your table? It may sound like I'm leaning one way over the other already if you really try to parse what I'm saying, but truthfully, I don't know where I stand quite yet. And I'm really hoping to figure that out by the end of this conversation. So let's take one side, really make a strong case for it, and then we'll take the other side, make a strong case for that, and then we'll see where we land. And then we'll get behind the paywall and we'll start talking about exactly how all the tabling and all that played out. So let's talk about the freeloader strategy, the networking only strategy, if we're going to be more friendly about it. This is a strategy I took for San Diego, New York Comic Con, even for Fan Expo this year, where I just attended it and I talked to everyone, but I wasn't actually tabling at these conventions. I was just there and made available, and I used the opportunity to talk to everyone I could have, to network, to really make it an experience, to really get the most of the thing that I take out of every convention I go to, which is the relationship building that you get going to these. It's a networking event. It's a professional event, even though it's meant to be fun, and it generally is. There are a few advantages to showing up just with a ticket and showing up on the floor and getting to talk to people. One, you're absolutely free to talk to anybody you want. You can pick up and go to the next table and do all that. You are able to go to all the panels that you want to go. So if there's something you want to learn, somebody you want to meet that way, that's a great way to get in front of people that you wouldn't have been able to get in front of otherwise. Although there's always that crush at the end of every panel where they say, thank you for coming, exits that way. And instead everybody makes a beeline to the table. That almost feels like in poor taste. I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you do want to speak to people after a panel, the way you do it is you wait outside of the room because they're also being rushed out of the room. And they usually want to take a picture to commemorate the panel or something. And you being in the way is not helping. And you're going to give yourself kind of a bad impression if you're doing that to folks. So if you insist on catching someone after a panel, do it for real after the panel. Like when they're outside of the room, that's the time to talk to them. Most people, if they're not on their way to something else or they have to rush back to their table because they don't have anybody watching it, most people will stop and talk to you. But they'll stop and talk to you in the appropriate setting. So something to keep in mind, if you're going and you don't have your own table to watch over, and you're using this opportunity to be a free agent and to float around the floor, is you still have to be courteous. You still have to be professional. Yes, you're wearing an attendee badge, but if you want to be treated as though you're a pro, you have to act like one. So remember that courtesy when you're at a panel. Same thing when you're visiting people at their tables. You don't want to be a table barnacle. You want to make sure that you understand these people paid a table fee to be there. They have to recoup that table fee. And that's not all. They want to actually make a profit. That's the goal of going to these events, is that maybe you can make some money doing so. And if you're hanging out in front of their table, the thing with comics people is they're introverted. So they're going to see someone else at their table and they're going to go, "Ooh, they're busy," and they're going to walk by. And you may have just cost your buddy a sale. So keep that in mind, that you want to be open. You want to, even your body language, be sideways to their table. Don't be blocking it. Don't be in the middle of it so people can't see things as they walk by. You want to seem like you're just hanging out and you're just having a chat, but you're not in the way. You're not there to pressure them. You're not there to loom over them. You're not there to block them. You're just having a conversation with the person who happens to be on the other side of the table. And if anything, you're inviting those people to come have the conversation. If you want to be friendly with people at a table, the best thing you could do is draw people in. So keep that in mind, especially with your body language, but also just when people come by, make them feel welcome, right? Don't try to continue the conversation while your buddy's trying to make a sale, right? You really want to help them while they're trying to do their job, do their work for the weekend, which is selling at this table. You don't want to be in the way. So there are some things to consider if you go as an attendee. The advantages, of course, are you're not paying the table fee. You're not stuck to your table. If you want to call it a night early, you can. If you want to call it a night when you're tabling, you cannot. You are there for the hours that they are open. So as an attendee, lots of freedom, which is a huge advantage. A downside is you're kind of an outsider, right? Yes, you may know people already, and it does allow you to have a lot of conversations. The more you get to know people, the more you see people over and over, people will be happy to see you. Especially, after a long day, getting to see a familiar face is a big deal. Speaking as someone who's been on the other side, I always love seeing someone I know, even if they're not there to buy anything. It's nice to just okay, I can relax a bit because I know this person. There isn't that pressure to sell or just chatting, right? So don't feel bad for going to people's tables. If anything, people do appreciate it, getting to see people they know. But you're not a part of the camaraderie of the weekend, right? Like, you're still just an attendee. You've dropped in. You are a limited time guest. And if you're not at the table, if you don't have the pro badge, if you aren't in the green room, if the con has a green room, you're having a different experience than the people who are there. And it's just something you can't replicate as an attendee that just showed up and is just hanging out for a bit. So it is something that you will lose in the whole experience. So let's talk the other side. Let's talk about going and getting a table. The worst thing of it all is table fees. If you're not invited as a guest, which if you're lucky enough to be invited as a guest, you can scratch this whole point, but you're probably not listening to this at that point anyway. But if you're regularly invited as a guest, they're giving you the table, and that's one huge problem taken away. That means everything you do that weekend, you are in the black already. So you're the blessed few that get a prime spot and doesn't have to pay an Artist Alley fee. However, for the rest of us that are crammed in the middle in Artist Alley, you are paying a table fee. So now your modus operandi for the weekend, try to make that table fee back. And that hangs over your head the entire weekend. And again, we'll talk about this over the paywall, but your expectations should be low. Sometimes you don't make your table back. If you're me, most times you don't make your table back. Some tables are more expensive than others. Some are a lot more reasonable. Those shows I will certainly be returning to, the reasonable ones. The ones that are a little higher, I really have to put some thought into it. And honestly, it's a make or break situation for a lot of conventions for me. If it's a show that I go to and the table is just so high, even if it was a good show, that's not good enough. It has to be a great show in those cases. And most shows aren't great shows. They're good shows. So it just does not make it worth it for you to return, because if you're not even making your table back, now you're just paying to be there. And at the end of the day, you're working retail to a degree. Yes, it's for your own work. And yes, it's for something like you love and you enjoy, but it's a retail job almost. You're there to do sales, right? And you're doing it for a long period of time. It's not a part-time thing. You're doing it for 8, 10 hours, depending on the show. So it really does drain on you a bit. There's also a weird situation where you feel like you always have to sell in every conversation. Again, if you're meeting with friends, you're meeting with people that there isn't that pressure, that's fine. But a lot of the times you're feeling that pressure to sell. You are there to make your table back. You are there to make new connections with new fans. So I had to step away for a moment. Don't mind the costume change. But the main point here is that if you're going to a convention to make connections, there's nothing like time. It's being there the entire weekend and spending time with your table mates and people around the convention and having to sit with them and be through it from beginning to end, through the load in to when you pack up everything and say your goodbyes. That is really hard to replicate when you're just an attendee. If anything, it makes you kind of strange for hanging around for so long without really needing to, given that you're so free to move about and do whatever you want. The fact that you might just stick around and want to hang out with them, it almost feels icky. It almost feels like you shouldn't be there that long. So you'll get your little bit of time with everybody. You'll get to spend a lot of time talking with folks and having your fun as an attendee. But at the end of the day, that time has a limit to it. There's only so long that you're going to get to spend with people before you have to move on to the next group. Where if you have a table, you have an excuse to be there all weekend, a reason, a purpose for being there the whole time. And the longer you spend around people, the more you're going to build a connection with them and the more you'll become friends with these people. And the next time you see them at the next show or at the next place, you have a common bond, a common struggle that you went through. So it's kind of silly. That's the reason. But if you think about it, when did you make most of your friends? When you had the most friends you've ever had in your life, you probably had them in school or at work or in a place where you were forced to see the same people time in, time out. And it's not entirely different with making comics and doing all that. It's a very solitary affair, especially if you're a writer and unless you're doing writing circles and things like that. And if you're in Toronto, you should reach out because I put one together every couple of months. That's well worth checking out. But if you're a writer, the chances are you're doing it alone. You're doing it alone in your basement. You're talking to people online and all that, but really, you don't really get too many opportunities to make those connections. So when people are going to conventions and they're at tables, and unless they're like extremely introverted, usually people are looking for that kind of connection while they're at that table. So that's one, if not the biggest advantage to having a table. The other big one, though, is that it does make you seem a lot more legitimate when you have a table. It's one thing to walk around a convention with a bag full of comics and hand them out to people and do trades and all that. I highly recommend it if you're a attendee to try to trade off your book, pick up books from people's tables and hand yours in return. I've made a lot of good friends like that. I've had a lot of people read my stuff that way too. So trades are always a good thing, but having a table and having a place for people to walk up to you and flip through your stuff and buy some stuff from you, that's the whole reason for doing a table, right? Like the connections and all that are very important and key to it all. But really, what you want to do is establish yourself as a true creator, as a professional. And the way you do that is by having a professional space at these conventions. So obviously, that is the biggest reason to actually table. That said, there are the risks, right? It has a cost, and you're going to be chasing table the entire time, the show fees and all that. And then when you make the show fees, then you can start factoring in hotels and food and all that. And you start seeing very quickly that it's very hard to make money at a convention. Unless you're a big name, unless you're doing really well, unless you've been a guest and you're not paying for table fees, so the rest of it's taken care of. It's very hard to come out on top after a weekend like this. So it's more of a marketing exercise than anything, right? You're going out there, you're letting people see who you are, you're making a name for yourself. And that's really the goal of all this, right? Is that people get to know who you are over and over when they keep seeing you at every show and they keep saying, oh, this guy's legit. He's here at this show and I saw him 2 shows ago and 3 shows ago. And the whole point is that the repetition of people seeing you over and over, hopefully that convinces them that you're a legitimate creator and you always have something new at every show or every other show. And they know that they can come to your booth and they can see something cool. And even if they don't get you something this time, they know that you will have something at some point. And that's the truth of all of it. Not just for conventions, but for creative endeavors in general. It's all a long game. You're not going to go to one convention and have a table, and then that's the day you make it. And you get discovered, and now you're writing Batman and Spider-Man at the same time. Well, that's not going to happen. What you're going to do is you're going to put a seed in someone's mind. They're going to see you. Maybe they pick up your books. Maybe they don't. Maybe they have a good conversation with you. And then they'll see you at the next convention and the next convention and the next one and the next one and the next one. And that's really what you have to remind yourself, especially if you're doing your first or second convention. It's going to take time to get there. So don't beat yourself up if you have a table and you haven't made table back and you're stressed out about all of it. It's not worth going through all that grief. what you have to do is just decide what your strategy is going to be. Are you going to be an attendee and just try to network and attend some panels and learn some stuff and make yourself seen, but not in a big official way? Or are you going to establish yourself as a true creator, get a table, have a banner that everybody could see and start to recognize your logo and your name? And, even if they don't know you, every time they start to recognize your work, maybe a cover that you put on your banner. So when they start seeing it around, it keeps repeating. This is the thing. Are you going to start playing that long game by being at the table? So what's the answer to all this? What is the right way to attend cons? Do you go as an attendee or do you go with a table? And the answer, it might upset some of you and some of you might have known right off the top, but it's kind of a cop out, but it's to mix it up. Be an attendee at some cons and table at others. Start tabling at the cheaper cons, at the smaller ones, build up that fan base, let people know who you are. Hopefully you can build yourself a name so that you could maybe even guest at other cons that you're not paying the table fees and that. I haven't been lucky enough to guest at any of them yet, but I know people who have, obviously, and they're doing really well running that circuit. And now they just go to cons based on whenever they feel like going to a con, right? They get invited here and there, and now they almost have to turn them down. I'm still relatively new to all of it, so no sour grapes. I haven't been to the same show twice, just to kind of give you a sense of how little I've been doing these shows thus far. Like, I've been to more than half a dozen, but I still have a lot to learn in terms of getting into these conventions and landing these special spots. But the point is, I started small. I went to smaller conventions and I kind of grew up from there. And I'm making a list, and I always know, okay, this is one I want to return to. This is one that maybe I'll come as an attendee, and this one I'll avoid entirely. And I do have that list. And for those of you that are curious of what's on it so far, we're going to cover that on the other side of the paywall. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find the rest of the video on Substack at pestocomics.substack.com. And if you're already watching this on Substack, you can scroll right to the bottom of the post and you'll see a link there to become a paid subscriber. You can even get a nice free trial so that you can just check out this video if this is the one that interests you, and it'll unlock all of them. So if you want to speed run all of them and check them all out, that's one way to do it. But I do keep the Substack prices as low as possible. So if you are interested, feel free to unlock all of them. But if that's not of interest to you, that's all right. We'll be back on Wednesday when we talk about working in seasons. It's kind of a redo of an old post that I've done talking about writing specifically, but this is going to be about doing the whole thing and really thinking about how I do everything in a seasonal nature. Right now, I'm really focused on comics, but that's starting to shift with Big Smoke Pulp Volume 2 coming out, and then both Switch Restart and Backlot Babylon coming out in the new year. I'm really starting to focus more on the author side of things and the indie author marketing and all that business. As I always say, lots of comics coming, but I'm trying to really focus on one thing so that I can get back to the next thing and give it 100%. So I'm entering the author season, and we talk about all of that on Wednesday if you're not going to join us behind the paywall. As always, I want to thank you for being here. Until next time.